With me right now is Sandra Smith. She's got Business Roots, co-anchor of America Reports from 1 to 3 today.
Hello, Brian Kilmeade.
Sandra, all of a sudden we're defaming the CBO. What happened?
I don't even know. And Jen Psaki made those comments on my air yesterday. On our air on our show, America Reports, yesterday. And I remember I sat back in my chair and I said, what's fake about that? What is fake about having the CBO look at a very real scenario that could actually play out? I think you have to ask yourself, in all reality, as an American, is it a possibility or is it a probability that the CBO scoring that out is a reality? I think it's a probability, right? I mean, you can't really look at it any other way. The CBO scored it the other way as well, by the way. So the CBO had an obligation to look at what is a very real scenario. I think that could happen. And I think that American people have to understand that a $3 trillion price tag is a very real thing because they're going to pay for it.
So Joe Manchin's holding out. So here is what Joe Manchin said yesterday about before he met with the President of the United States via the telephone, obviously. And there's going to be a follow-up call this week.
Inflation is real. It's not transitory. It's alarming. It's going up, not down. And I think that should be something we're concerned about, geopolitical fallout. I just don't think that that's a fair evaluation of saying that we're going to spend X amount of dollars, but then we're going to have to depend on coming back finding more money. I'm concerned about paying down debt, too.
So, yeah, that's what he's saying. It's not realistic to say it's going to sunset in a year. Oh, I want these programs to go. Well, who's going to get that money in a year or two, whether the House is in the Republican hands or Democratic hands? So what do you think's more realistic, Sandra?
Well, and Democrats have already gone on the record, and we should play the tape of every single one of them saying that they will ask for those to be extended, and the timeline is probably 10 years. As far as what this does to the bigger picture. By the way, I've got Nikki Haley on this today. Lindsey Graham has been talking about this on our airways as well. He just tweeted out this morning talking about Congresswoman Jayapal, chair of the Progressive Caucus. He says, all due respect, Congresswoman, the CBO score exposes the fraud in Build Back Better. It is not outdated, and instead it is inconvenient for the hopes and dreams of the left. The Wall Street Journal editorial board obviously wrote about this as well. You've got to look at stripping out the gimmicks that the Democrats have employed in this bill and look at the reality. I think it's fair that everybody's doing that today. So, big picture, Brian, you talk about my Business Roots background. Everybody's got to be concerned about inflation right now. If you are not, you are nuts.
40-year high.
I'm not just talking from an economic perspective. I'm talking about from a political consequences perspective as well. 40-year high, only going up. Joe Biden says it's going to peak. That should be a red flag to everybody. Sorry if I'm a bit of a contrarian when it comes to that. But if you're talking about inflation, a result of the massive spending that we have already put in place in this country, and you're talking about spending massive amounts more, where in history have you ever seen inflationary pressures calm in the wake of more government spending? There is not a moment in history where that is the case. So why is this time any different?
So between the CBO score and the inflation rate, you got to think it's the 1-2 punch that at the very least delays this game. So Senator Warren was saying, hey, listen, President Biden's going to talk to Joe Manchin again. She says this: there's nothing more to be gained for more talk. We have talked. It's time to make some final decisions and vote. But he's the moderate. Kyrsten Sinema, remarkably quiet. Other people might have trouble keeping their seats if they support this in moderate areas, like Senator Hassan of New Hampshire. Yeah. You think they're going to be in for this?
Joe Manchin's going to turn out he's just rock star in this moment, right? He's not putting any arbitrary deadlines. He's speaking his mind. He's going to come out of this a big winner because at the end of the day, if he says yes, he and his fellow Democrats will be responsible for the massive amount of debt we take on. All right, here's my other point. The evil cycle that is inflation. You've now got CEOs that have been meeting with President Biden that have gone on the record saying, in the new year, we are likely going to have to implement massive pay raises. They're going to have to raise salaries. They're going to have to raise wages. You know,
how will that affect
we keep saying everybody's going to report. Fox News says pay raises and higher wages is a bad thing. Well, you have to look at the cycle. The CEOs are saying that because the pace of inflation is rising faster than the pace of wage growth. And when that happens, you have a major imbalance and people feel that. And workers who have a lot of leverage right now with 11 million open jobs, Brian, they're going to demand more pay. So the evil cycle I'm talking about is those CEOs are going to have to raise pay for their workers in the new year to beat inflation. And then guess what happens? Those companies that are implementing those pay raises, they're going to pass those costs down to the consumer.
Right.
And that's who will ultimately pay.
So that's why people say when the price goes up, that also affects inflation. So it's going to be a heavy lift. We'll see who else comes out there. Joe Manchin does not seem to mind the spotlight. He lives off it, doesn't seem to mind it. Doesn't mind people following him around. To me,
I think he minds. But he's willing to fight for it, right?
Well, if he knew if he was taking on the president like this and the entire left.
Remember the Maserati moment in the garage?
Yes. We all remember the first time a gang stopped our Maserati in the garage. We all remember the first time anyway. So that seems to stand out. But Joe Manchin, I guess he's 70-something years old, already made his money. They're trying to find something on him. They're already bringing up his investments into natural gas. And is he doing something for his own interest? And
boy.
I'm just saying, they got to look into his background. That's certainly going to be it. Keep in mind, too, Joe Manchin's using his leverage for Democrats. Remember, the theory is that the reason why Mitch McConnell went out there and raised the debt ceiling the first time is because Joe Manchin went up to him and said, how am I supposed to be able to say that I'm working, Republicans are easy to work with when you wouldn't even let me raise the debt ceiling? And Mitch McConnell said, I hear you. Yeah. Because the last thing he wants to do is make Joe Manchin look bad to his own party.
Yeah. No, it's a great point. Our econ panel today, love having them on, Steve Moore and Robert Wolf. We are going to run a soundbite from Allianz, the chief economic advisor there, Mohammed El-Arian. I believe you know him, Brian. He comes on the show often. He said on Fox News Sunday over the weekend, the characterization of inflation as transitory is probably the worst inflation call in the history of the Federal Reserve. So now there's a big question over whether or not the White House will be able to sort of shift the blame for the what do they call it, Biden stagflation, whether or not can be able to shift the blame from the White House now to the Federal Reserve, who quite clearly did get this wrong, calling the higher prices, transitory, which they clearly have shown that they are not. Is it the Fed's fault? Should they have acted sooner?
Right. The
answer is yes, but this is all happening under the Biden administration.
And how many moves do they have? I mean, lower interest rate, raise interest rates, or they could stop printing money for a change. And if they stop printing money, some people might get not printing money.
The emergency is over.
Yeah.
One should make the case. And we shouldn't be living in this super easy money environment that we have been.
You know what I worry about? The deal that Jay Powell may have cut to keep the job. Because after meeting suddenly Joe Biden, who was down on this Donald Trump pick, who Donald Trump was clashing, and all of a sudden it's like, well, I don't think I really have a problem with him. And then Elizabeth Warren's complaints kind of went away. I wonder, what deal did he cut in order to keep a job that has a lot of prestige, not a lot of pay? So that is the one thing that I find fascinating, because no one's looking at, if you look at unemployment and growth, okay, Joe Biden's got to feel pretty good about it. Unemployment went down. Growth is pretty good.
Yeah.
But nobody feels that way. And because when you look around, the prices are up. These shelves, even though Joe Biden told us they're not, are not as full as they were. They're a little bit of a challenge to the supply chain to blame. And then you have a situation where a lot of people are not working. I would love to see Joe Biden make a few speeches where, listen, I only have 6 in 10 workers working, if that. Mm-hmm. I need a lot of you can. I understand it. But there's many of you can. America's built on our work ethic. That's what they brought in. We need you to go back to work. We need you to fill some of these millions of jobs that are open now.
This is why when I have this conversation, I just had this conversation with Larry Kudlow as well. Has there just been a change in philosophy 2 years into this pandemic about work? Right? When you know that the government will be a backstop and not just an emergency backstop, but they'll be there for you even when things improve, which is still the case. Has there been a change in philosophy? I think there's a lot more to it than that. People write about the gig economy has changed things. People have worked out ways to stay home, do other things rather than 9-to-5 jobs, and that's sort of kept a lot of these jobs empty. But I do think that there's been a shift in the way America works. I think that's going to be looked back on in this moment in history.
People listen to us around the country, around the world, and we're located in New York. And I think it's another time to bring up what's happening here locally. The mask mandate. 9 separate counties have said, we're not enforcing it. We don't need it. We're not enforcing it. I had the incoming, the Nassau County executive come on today and say, We have 91% vaccination rate. That's what you told Nassau County to do. They did it. 84% over in Rockland, Livingston. We're not doing it. In New Jersey, we're not doing it yet, they said, but it could be coming. I think there's huge backlash. This was such a huge mistake for this Governor Hochul to decide to do this. And I'll give you an example. You work out all the time, right?
Yes,
Do you belong to a gym?
Ran, yes.
Do you belong to a gym?
I do.
Do you know on Long Island, there's this huge division because now half the people want everyone to wear a mask. Let's say a third. Yep. 2/3 say, if I have to wear a mask, I'm not going to the gym. So they have people protesting out in front of these gym owners who don't make a ton of money between all the maintenance and the leases and everything having the equipment, saying, wait a second. Well, Governor Hochul says you better. I'm going to report you. The others say, if you make me wear a mask, I'm done. And then you got this 18-year-old who's at the desk who has to tell Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, put the mask on, really, or Mr. and Mr. Hulk to put it on or you're going to have to leave.
I know.
So it's between that, the restaurants. And can we play, before we go to break, Eric, what is that soundbite that you have from CBS? Listen to the new rules, because you're a mom. Listen.
New rules for kids in New York City starting today. Children as young as 5 will need to show proof of 1 COVID vaccine dose to dine indoors, go to the movies, or other performances. This also applies for school activities like sports, dance, and band. Then starting December 27th, kids 12 and up will have to show proof of 2 doses.
Oh, man. I have some friends that just went to Broadway over the weekend to see Harry Potter, and it was like they had to get their clear COVID tests. They're already vaccinated just to go into the city and go to a show. I mean, it's unbelievable. I've been talking to Mark Siegel a lot about this. Dr. Mark Siegel, he and I are going to co-write something for either US Today or Wall Street Journal. We haven't decided yet. I mentioned to him, up in Massachusetts, they are following a model of your community reaches 80% vaccination rate. The kids can take off the masks at school. He said, that's fascinating because you know what? You have to have a goal, right? There's got to be a goal that you reach that then you can take the mask off. We can't live like this forever. But I mean, you're talking about in this area, not only do most people have 2 shots, they've got the booster shots. Kids 5 to 11 now have their shots. My kids have their shots. They're still wearing masks in school.
But the problem is it's not just goal. A lot of people do not feel comfortable with it. They don't want to get the vaccine. A lot of them see that what's happening, a lot of these young athletes, they see some swelling of the heart, fluid on the heart, the myocarditis. You're better at saying that, Eric, than I. How do you say it? Myocarditis. They see it. I've seen 4 or 5 people like, excuse me, I'm fine.
But that's fine. Then it should be a choice. If you get vaccinated, they've talked about then the kids can take off the mask in school, but then it should be voluntary. Then if the kid chooses not to, then wear a mask.
Absolutely. I love it. Here's Governor Jared Polis, Democrat from Colorado. My hope is people will put the D and R away and just be logical like this. Cut 8.
Amen.
The emergency is over. So, public health doesn't get to tell people what to wear. I mean, that's just not their job. Public health would say always wear a mask because it always decreases flu. It always decreases anything. But that's, not something that you require. You don't tell people what to wear. You don't tell people to wear a jacket when they go out in the winter and force them to. If they get frostbite, it's their own darn fault.
Thank you.
Amen. Amen. If you don't wear a hat, you're going to get cold.
So you shouldn't smoke. A lot of people shouldn't eat fatty foods. Right? I mean, we can't get into people's lives like this.
To that point, how often have you gone to the doctor recently as things have gotten better and you've got doctors, their primary concern is not COVID. Their primary concern is people missing their regular examinations, their regular screenings. They're coming in late. They find out they have cancer. I mean, that is a problem.
Right. And at the head of it is the guy up top, Anthony Fauci, saying, look out. Now get a 3rd, 4th shot. A 3rd shot might have a separate Omicron shot so we don't get a 99 fever and a runny nose. Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.